All right. Welcome to another week, another episode of Transformational Tuesday. You're now back at it again with me, the real Matt McCoy. All right, guys, so last week we talked about how it's imperative to get started in on your goals and dreams because there's no better time than right now. All right, so once you've gotten past the fear of getting started and you've actually taken that first step, now comes the work, baby. Now it's time for the work. Now you have to put in the work in order to become successful. And you have to take a workmanlike approach into each and every day. And that's why this week's theme and this week's message is everything you do matters. It matters because so many times we get caught up in the big goal. We get caught up in the big goal that we lose sight of the actual small steps that are needed in order to accomplish that goal. All right, so that's why I say that you have to understand where you want to be. But you have to also understand the progressive steps that are needed in order to get there, in order to reach the pinnacle. All right, so this week I'm going to give you guys three principles that not only help you achieve your goals and dreams, but also want to help you to get started because everything you do matters day in and day out. All right, so the very first principle that I want to give you is to do your due diligence. Let me say it again. Do your due diligence. And I say that because in order to become successful, you have to understand and have the knowledge of what it takes to actually become successful. All right. And so that means getting in a book. That means doing the research that it takes and looking at the figures who have become successful in your industry or your field and see what they did in order to become successful so that you have a blueprint on how to become successful yourself. All right. And that doesn't mean everything that worked for them will work for you. But what it does mean is that you can actually physically see what they did to go from step A to step Z. All right. And so once you have an understanding of what they did to become successful, then you can choose bits and pieces of what all of them did and incorporate them into your own life. All right. And that goes for whatever industry, whatever field that you're in. All right. Me personally, motivational speaking. It would be naive and foolish of me to not actually look back and see what some of the greats before me did in order to become successful. All right, that means looking at the Tony Robbins. That means looking at the Les Browns, the Eric Thomases, the Zig Ziglars, and seeing what they did in order to become successful, and then taking bits and pieces of what they did and incorporating them into my own life, right? And not everything that worked for them will work for me, and vice versa. Not everything that I do would work for them. But what I'm saying is that they've already laid out the blueprint. They've laid the foundation for me, and all I have to do is observe and research and figure out what they did to become successful and then pattern my own life after that. All right, and that goes the same as for you. No matter what it is that you do, no matter what industry or what field you're in, whether it be you're trying to start your own business, whether it be that you're trying to increase your ACT score, whether it be you're just trying to become a better parent, there's been somebody that's come before you that has laid the foundation and the blueprint for you, and all you have to do is do your due diligence and research on how they became successful and then incorporate that into your own life. All right? And that leads me to my second principle. And my second principle is that you have to dedicate your time. Dedicate your time. And I know that sounds really simple, that sounds really easy, but a lot of times this is simplistic stuff that is the hardest to do. Right? And so many times we get caught up in wanting to do, we don't feel like doing it right now, right? We don't feel like doing the stuff that we need to do right now, or we want to sleep in, or we want to go out with our friends and have fun. But in order to become successful, sometimes you're going to have to give up some things, right? You're going to have to make some sacrifices in your life in order to become great at whatever it is that you want to do in life. All right? And sometimes when you give up one thing, you get another thing in return, okay? And that's why I say you have to dedicate your time because, as I said before, you have to take a workmanlike approach into each and every day, and you have to diligently work and keep putting in your time each and every day in order to become successful, all right? And I think that's what's lost upon us is that we see these successful figures. We see the LeBron Jameses. We see the Peyton Mannings. We see the Warren Buffetts. We see the people who are successful, and we admire their talent and their skill, but oftentimes we forget the fact of the great work and what they did in order to actually reach that level, all right? And so that's why, we see the glitz and the glam, and we see everything that goes along with being successful and being great, but what we forget is that the great work ethic that they had in order to get there, and that's what actually makes them special. All right, unfortunately for me, I had the opportunity to see one of the greats in action. And when I was in California, I was going to Oakland Gym. It's called King's Gym. And I don't know if you're familiar with Andre Ward, but Andre Ward is one of the top pound-for-pound boxers in the game today. A lot of people have Floyd Mayweather and Andre Ward, one and two in pound-for-pound. One of the best boxers in the world. And I had the pleasure of actually working at the same gym as him, and I was able to see what he did on a day in and day out basis, and it was amazing. I would come in the gym every day, and this guy was working 3 hours a day. I mean, whether he had a fight or not, it didn't matter. He was putting in the work each and every day. I mean, he was changing shirts in between workouts after each hour because he would sweat so much, had to take off another shirt and put another one on because he was putting in the work. He was putting in the time each and every day. And that not only applies to sports, that applies to business, that applies to music, whatever it is that you're trying to do in life. You have to put in the work, you have to put in the time, right? Because everything you do matters. And that leads me to my third and final point. And my third and final point is don't make excuses, make adjustments. I'll say it again. Don't make excuses, make adjustments. Because what happens when you've done the research, you have the knowledge that it takes to be successful, and you've actually applied that and put that into your life and you've worked for it, yet you still don't have the results that you desire. That's when it's time to take a step back, look at what it is that you're doing right, look at what it is you're doing wrong, and then make the necessary adjustments in order to fix that. All right, there's a story that I actually read the other day, and it was surprising to me, and it made me think about this. It was about a story about a bunch of millionaires, and it was saying how 8 in 10 millionaires, 8 in 10, at one point or another had filed for bankruptcy. 8 in 10, that's 80%. It was crazy to me because so many times we see these successful people and we see everything that is that they're doing right, that we never hear about what it is that they did wrong and the hiccups that they had along the way and the failures that they had. But 80% filed for bankruptcy. That's crazy. All right, but that just goes to show that you're not going to always get it right the first time. You're not always going to, you're going to have bumps in the road. You're going to have hiccups, and you're not always going to have it all put together that very first time or the second time or even the third time sometimes. But if you stay persistent and keep with it, eventually you'll figure it out. But you have to make the adjustments necessary. All right, and that reminds me actually of my own life. There was a time when I first went to college. And I thought I was ready. I was hyped. I was ready to go to college. I was super pumped. All right, so I get there, I'm going through, and then all of a sudden it turns from doing classwork to partying. And eventually I get put on academic probation. I drop out after just a year. All right, but I learned from my mistakes, and when I went back 9 years later, I actually was able to achieve and get that bachelor's that had previously eluded me because I stayed persistent and I figured out and made the adjustments that were needed in order to actually accomplish that goal. All right, so that's why I say you're not always going to get it right the first time. All right, as a matter of fact, you may not get it right the second, third, fourth time. But as long as you stay persistent, as long as you keep going and you keep that ultimate goal in mind, and sometimes you just take that step back and analyze the situation, and you can make those necessary adjustments, then you can still have that goal or dream that it is that you desire. So that's why I say everything you do matters. It matters because once you have the understanding and you have the knowledge of what it takes to be successful, and you've done your due diligence, and then you actually take that and you apply it to your life, and you put in the work day in and day out, all right, and you dedicate your time to being great and becoming successful, eventually you will get there through time. Eventually you will get the results that you desire. All right, but if at first you don't succeed, then you have to make the necessary adjustments that are needed in order to get back on track. Okay, because the future that we want is dictated by what we do today, not by what we say we are going to do tomorrow. So let's go get what we want. Let's make it happen, baby.